Well, welcome. My name is Charity Rouse. I'm the Director of Local History for the Spartanburg County Public Library System. And this is part of our ongoing genealogy series that the library presents. And we are recording it. It will be posted on the library's YouTube page. Give us a couple of days. Sometimes something goes wonky in the recording and it takes a little bit longer, but it will be in the genealogy playlist. If you are new to our series, all of the programs from last year plus some are on our genealogy playlist on the YouTube page. So feel free to check those out. There is a short handout, and that can be found in the links. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you're looking for the chat at either the bottom or the top of your screen, you will see a little chat thought bubble, and you can click on that and then type your chat question. And we will catch that at the end. My colleague Kristen is on the Kennedy Room account, and she will be happy to help field questions if you've got questions. Just a brief plug. Next month, we will continue with our genealogy building blocks, and that presentation will look at what is your question, questions that you may, how do you formulate the question? How do you ask a question so that the librarian or historical society volunteer or staff member can better help answer the question? And then in December, we will talk about evaluating your resources. When you find a new resource, how do you look at it and figure out, is this a good resource? Is this not a reliable resource? That kind of thing. In the spring, starting in January, we will get into some genealogical weeds and look at some smaller resources. We all know the big sources such as the census and that kind of census, vital records, those types of databases and collections, but there are some smaller collections that can be very helpful. So we're going to look at a lot of those throughout the spring, and then we'll finish the series in June with a DNA presentation. So keep the first Monday night on your radar screen to come join us at 7 o'clock Eastern, Spartanburg County Public Libraries. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the genealogy building block of ways to organize and build your family tree. There are a number of types of family trees. You can do it on paper. You can do your tree on your computer, or you can do it online. None of these is better or worse. You need to find what works for you. And you may find, like I do, that you use a combination of all three. But your family tree is the basic building block for organizing your research, seeing how you relate to other people and who relates to who. Just one note about the picture. This picture was taken off the Skyline Drive about between 1 and 2 years after a forest fire. And so you see this tree is a little scraggly, but there is new growth happening. So don't fret if you hit those genealogical brick walls. That information may take a while to get found, but it's there for you eventually. So keep working. Know that, some parts of your family tree might be easier to research than others, and that's okay. Keep working. So for a paper-based system, you're going to have two primary charts that you use, a pedigree chart and a family unit chart. The tree that is shown here is intended for kids, and it's one I had made for a program I was doing with kids. And it's just one of those, hey, but it's a fun graphic to say, we're all on this family tree. And how do we connect? So, family pedigree chart. This old school, I have some in my collection as well, that you start with yourself on line number 1, and you put in your birth date and where you were born. If you're married, you put in the marriage date and location. if you're not dead, you're not going to use that for you. And then you put your spouse name and your children's name down on this left-hand corner. You notice this blank here. So you have to do some record keeping of your own where you put number 1, and then you have a spot over here that says entry number 1 on this chart relates to entry number whatever on another chart. So what happens with this, so that you don't end up with a wall-sized chart within a few generations, you start with yourself, you add your parents, your father's parents, your mother's parents, and then you have room to add the parents of your great-grandparent generation. But you notice there's not room for all of the various information on each of those people. And so they become the first person on your next chart. And it is a very flexible system. If you only want to do the straight paternal line, you can just keep going back on that paternal line as long as you can and just have chart 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then when you come back to the next family that you're researching, then you can add them at whatever number chart you're at, or you can choose to number your charts with maybe a surname letter and number 1 or something like that, that whatever system makes sense, so that you can go backward and forward on these charts. These are most likely going to go into folders or notebooks that can show you, you go move back and forth between. When you are going to a repository to research, you can pick up that folder for that line that you think you need to have with you and head to the library to research, or the historical society or museum or archive, whatever it is. The other chart that you will find helpful is family unit chart. And you'll also have noticed both of these have a who created it and when. And that way you can kind of track when you were last working on some of your information. And this gives you more information about that immediate family. So the full name of dad, mom, their information about birth, marriage, death, burial, because you can die someplace and then be buried in another state. Some information about parents and other spouses, because sometimes you need to figure out which kids belong to which spouse. And there are many family unit charts and many pedigree charts out there online, but if you want one of ours, just send an email to kroom@infodepot.org, and we'll be happy to send you these. And then you list the children, and you can list a spouse's name on there. Especially if it's not your line, you may not be researching that other family, but it's always good to know who they married, what family they married into. Because sometimes you find, oops, brothers married sisters, or cousins married cousins, and things that sometimes those surnames come back in and are important. You can also add notes on this, such as military service, church membership, those types of things that might help you research that family. I started my genealogy research well before the internet and before personal computers were really a thing. And so I started with these paper forms. There's some pros and cons of paper. Physical storage can be bulky. You're looking at folders or notebooks, file folders, accordion folders, various things. It can be really tedious to record sources on these, because if you've got a source for a birth, you're going to have to make sure you note it, and then maybe put the source information on the back of the paper, and then you have to keep track of your citations. And I have to say, when I was using the paper forms, I was really, really bad about citing my sources. So, learning curve. Cite your sources, because you will really hate yourself when you go back and you can't figure out where you found that maiden name or that birth date in whatever form it is if you haven't said where you found it. So it's a little more tedious to do that on the paper forms. Some people are good at it. I'm not, so I can only speak from my own experience on that one. The other thing I have found is that you might not have the right piece of paper with you at a library, like you planned on working on your paternal grandparents' lines. And you didn't know that somebody on your maternal side of the family happened to have been in that area. And all of a sudden there's an intersection of family lines and you don't have all of the right folders with you because, you know, rolling around a suitcase full of file folders, which genealogists do, can get heavy. It can get really difficult to haul along, especially if you're traveling. And so sometimes you don't have the right piece of paper. So sometimes having the paper is helpful though, because a lot of archives and some of the larger research facilities may not allow you to take your computer or your phone or other electronic devices into the archive, especially if it's an archive. And they may restrict you to just, you can take in 3 pieces of paper and a pencil and physically handwrite your notes. So do your prep beforehand, and you may want to take the printouts from your online or your other tree. You can print out a family unit sheet, you can print out a pedigree chart, but sometimes you need that piece of paper. And then one of the really big pros of this is if the internet is down, if the power is out, you still have the information that you can look at to be looking at books, researching your family. So there are pros and cons to all of these systems. So again, you need to find what works for you, and you may find that it's a mix of all 3 types of trees and record keeping. So we're going to look briefly at 2 programs that are computer based. These are representative of what is out there. There are a whole lot more programs available, but these are 2 primary ones that I hear about the most from patrons. And I personally have used Family Tree Maker since 2012, when I got really back into genealogy and decided I needed to have that record keeping on my computer. So Family Tree Maker is one, and originally that was the only thing that would sync or connect up with Ancestry. They've gone through a couple of producers of that program now. It's now under Software McKeev. And then Roots Magic is another, and Roots Magic associates with a lot more online places than ever before. And Family Tree Maker does sync with more than just Ancestry now. There are many others that can be downloaded. There are some freeware ones. I think Brothers Keeper is still out there, and a lot of people like it because it's no frills. It's just a basic recording software. Legacy is a one that a lot of people really like. It's very robust with its source citations. So there are many others out there. These are just 2 as examples. So this is what the primary plan screen of my Family Tree Maker, and this is version 2017. So version 2019 may look a little different. I did not invest in that upgrade. And so you get to see there's a home person here. That would be me. The current person I was looking at, which would have been my great grandfather. that I've got 1,933 people in this tree. I've got 567 marriages. I'm not sure why that particular statistic was the one they picked, but anyway, I first created this particular tree January 1st of 2018. And I think that's when I did the upgrade from Family Tree Maker 2014 to 2017. Tells me when I last saved it, last backed up the database. You can have the family sync on through Ancestry, primarily. I think you can turn on some other places as well. And I choose to control when my program syncs. And I use Family Tree Maker less as a research place and more as a backup for my Ancestry tree. And that's just how I have found it to be workable for me. Because I work in the Kennedy room, I have access to microfilm, I have access to databases, those types of things that I often find it easier to work on my tree on Ancestry, and we'll get to the online trees in a minute, and then sync down that tree with all those changes and documents to my Family Tree Maker, and then that serves as an offline backup. And then I also back up my computer. So you have to take some responsibility for doing your own backups when it's on your computer. You can see down here in the bottom center that you can link Family Tree Maker, Roots Web, Fold3, archives, newspapers. So you can link a number of things. And then in the top right here, you can connect with Family Search as well if you log in. So there are a couple places that you can log in. You can get hints from these various sources if you're connected and logged in. So many people use on their computer software as their primary place. This is what a person page looks like. This is for my great-grandfather, William Fitzhugh Rouse, or Fitzhugh William Rouse. We're still working on what the order is and whether William was actually part of his name. But up here you get the pedigree view of him, his spouse, parents, grandparents. Down here at the bottom, you get more information about him. So this is a little bit of the pedigree chart plus the family unit chart, because you get the 3 children and their birth and death information. You get the spouse's name as well. On the right, you have an editable screen where you can change or update the information. On the left-hand side here, you have a list of all 1,933 people in this particular tree, and you can move between them by clicking on that person. I can't on this because this is a screenshot, but if I were in the live program, I could. You can have multiple family trees going. You can sort by people, which is where the people are under in this. Places, you can look at the media, the pictures, the documents. You can check the sources that you've looked, and you can publish things. And so this is just the other view of the tree, and this gives you the family tree view. And so you can see all the siblings in the visual. And you'll find as you're working with any of these online products, computer or online, that you may prefer one view over another view. And again, that is your choice as to how you want to organize things and what works best for you. Because any system can be great if it works for you and it does the job you need it to do. On the publish, you get options to publish charts, genealogy report, person reports, if you're trying to figure out what facts you're missing on your ancestor, that kind of thing. Relationship reports, if you have this DNA match and you figured out how they fit in your tree, but you can't quite figure out, okay, are we second cousins 2 times removed, or first cousins 3 times removed, or that kind of thing. You can, if they're in the tree that is in the software, you can do a relationship report and it will tell you how you are related to each other. And that can be pretty helpful sometimes when you've got multiple weirdnesses going on in that particular tree. And just as an example, I did a fan chart on this. Now, one thing on the reports that you're going to want to pay attention to is how many pieces of paper does this want to print on? This is actually 6 pages of paper that it will print on, and then you have to splice and tape to get the whole fan chart on it. One of the things about genealogy is once you get past your immediate family, all of a sudden you're probably not on 1 letter size piece of paper anymore, or even an 11 by 17 ledger size piece of paper. It can be multiple pages, but it can also be helpful to have that visual to see how these various places align and where the blanks are. This particular one has some blanks because I'm starting with my great-grandfather. And so I don't have that many generations filled in with proof on this particular tree. I have another tree that I've got more people on and more generations, but it was my tree that I wasn't being picky about what my sources were. And I have some lines on there that are not my relatives. So you have to be careful. And that's why having your sources, because you may have taken a fact from a reliable source and then you find out it's the other Mary Lawhorn, born in the same year in Rockbridge County, Virginia. And when there are 2 with what people think is going to be a fairly rare name, it can cause some massive confusion. So, a little bit about the Roots Magic. Now, Roots Magic, this one, I downloaded the free Roots Magic Essentials, Roots Magic 7 Essentials last week, and was playing around with it a little bit. So I'm not as familiar with this, but it works very similarly to Family Tree Maker. So you have to create the new file and tell it where to save, what the date format you want, those types of things. And whether you want to enable web hints or not, I left it checked because I was like, I don't know what this is. So you can always change the various things. And then I started adding people. And so this asks you to add the information. It doesn't actually ask you to source it at this point. And so that's one of those things that you need to be doing your sources. And then I added a bunch of people. Now, what the web hints are is you get this little light bulb that says, hey, we've got a web hint. Well, that web hint ends up being, from MyHeritage. So we'll get there in a sec. But you again get the list of names on the left-hand side, so you can choose which ancestor you're working on. You can see it in the pedigree view, so that person to parents to parents to parents, or you can have it in that family view that will tell you husband, wife, each of their parents, and children. And this doesn't have all 3 siblings because I didn't get them all in here, but it gives you a chance to look at that. Now, the web hints pop up, and I clicked on that little light bulb, and it says, okay, here's the web hint for this. And it's being provided by MyHeritage. Now, see, you can do family search and you can do ancestry as well. You just have to have those logged in and connected to this program. And you can look at it. When I clicked on that web hint, it gave me this screen. So it says it's a smart match for this person in the Family Search family tree, but this is through MyHeritage. And it gives some information about the parents, the wife, the children, and the 2 siblings. And if you click view record, that kind of thing, it will ask you to log into your MyHeritage subscription, which is a paid subscription, which you may or may not have, and access it. One of the things that I have seen people talk about on Roots Magic is that you can click and say, okay, add all of these people, sources unseen, to my tree. So they can add entire lines of their family into their tree. I tend to not trust other people's research quite that much. I like to see document by document, source by source, what are we adding? What is it, a good source or is it a bad source? That's me as a librarian, as somebody who is kind of skeptical on all of this because I've learned the hard way. Because I've researched entire lines of the family that aren't my family, of a family that aren't my family. So, but it's a tool. It's a way to discover things. And as computers are out there and getting better and better, it is changing the world of genealogy a lot, that we don't have to necessarily order the microfilm or order the interlibrary loan book and wait for 3-4 weeks for it to come in and then look page by page by page through a document or a resource. So, I'm not saying don't use technology. I use technology. I'm using technology right now. But just because somebody else says that's your person, at least think through and make sure it's logical. I was looking at something on a app that said, oh, you are related to some famous person, whatever, and they had a mother who was 1 when the daughter was born, and that doesn't work. But yet it was in this tree that they were using to do this connection, and it's like, no, I doubt it, that something's fishy in that line. So, but it's a good tool to look at. So, some pros and cons of the computer programs. You may have a computer crash. You may have loss, hurricane, wildfire, earthquake, house fire, flood. You may have theft. I had a laptop stolen a number of years ago that had a lot of stuff on it that I did not have adequately backed up or printed out. And so I had to do a lot of work to recreate, and some things that were on that laptop I couldn't recreate. So just something to remember. You do have to keep things upgraded for all the tools to work, and that may involve paying for an upgrade of the program. You have to keep the computer upgraded. When you have to change from Windows Vista to Windows whatever to Windows 10 or Windows XP. I know some people who still have genealogy programs on a Windows XP computer. They are well on borrowed time because none of that is supported, and there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong, but they like that particular version of something. Just keep it backed up. Just because it's an older program does not mean that you can automatically upload it to a new version. You might have to go through some intermediate versions to get it upgraded. But if you have backups, hopefully they can be read at some point. It may take some work. You do need power for the computer. Internet is a very good tool with these, especially if you're going to use it to sync with one or use it for research in one of the online databases. You do need to do your own backups. Nobody else is going to back that up for you. But you can print charts, reports, stories, things like that much more easily than completely handwriting it out or typing it out yourself if you're using paper, that kind of thing. And you have more control over what those charts and reports include than you do from some of the online places. You can connect to the online databases for research or for archiving. As I said, I usually work online and use my Family Tree Maker as my archive copy. And it is easier with the computer to add the sources and track those facts and where you got them, if you use the options. So there are some online tree options, and we're going to look briefly at 4 of them. Ancestry is very well known. MyHeritage is another large database. Family Search, extremely large database. The first 2 are subscription, you pay. These last 2 are free. Family Search and WikiTree, but they're free, but they're also wikis. They are world trees, and we'll get to the differences between the first 2 and the second 2. Now, are there other places online for trees? Yes, there are a lot. Find My Past and Genie, GENI, and just a whole bunch of places. These were just 4 that are kind of the big ones most people have heard about at this point. So on Ancestry, and this is a small tree that only had deceased people in, because in genealogy, unless you have that person's written, living person's written permission, you don't put their information out in a program such or online like I'm doing here. And so I try not to have to redact too much on too many of my slides. But on this particular line in this particular tree, you get the person, you get the spouse and children listed, you get their parents listed. Ancestry gives you the little green leaf, and you can click and you can add parents and other information. I was adding some things from somebody else's tree apparently, because I don't know how else I would have gotten John R. Bethea 1816 in there, because I don't put a birth date, birth year as the differential between all of the other John Betheas in that family tree. There are a bajillion John Betheas. Every line has a couple. And so I'm not sure where that 1816 came in, but these types of things do creep in when you're working online, and pulling from other people's, potentially other people's information. This is a different view of that tree, and it gives you the siblings. So this, and you can move in and out. And so it gives, what is that? Great great granddaddy, wife number 1 from whom I descend, wife number 2, their children, some of my grandfather's first cousins here. On the bottom left, you can kind of see hey, we're looking at this little bit of the tree. If you need to move over here and look at the kids of the youngest kid or whatever, you can move back and forth using this little guide. You can go up into the right-hand corner here, click tree search, and search for a name in your tree. You may be able to search locations also. I'm not positive on that, because they've made some changes and upgrades recently. On the left-hand side in the top corner, you see which tree you're looking in, and you can change between the pedigree view and the family view. You can choose and go back to your home person. Your home person is usually you, but it's whoever you're building the tree for. So I've built trees for some of my friends, and they are the home person. I'm not even in the tree. You can reload it. You can increase the size or decrease the size if you want to see more of the people, that kind of thing. One of the things that Ancestry has done, which is helpful, is you see we've got little pink girls, we've got little blue boys, and we've got these gray unknowns. if nothing in the record that you're adding designates that there is a gender, it will add as an unknown. And so you will have to specify female or male when you're editing that person's profile. And this can also be helpful for situations where in the community room, we refer to them as the rainbow sheep, because we're always looking for that black sheep ancestor. The rainbow sheep is someone who might be in the LGBTQIA plus categories, and they may be gender ambiguous, or they may be trans and transitioning between one gender and another specified gender. So there's at least a third option now. All of the various software, to the best of my knowledge, does now allow same-sex unions as well as male-female unions. So it took a while for our software to catch up with the reality of 21st century life, but it's getting there. And sometimes you have to just kind of play with it and make it do what you want it to do. But again, you see if there's a profile picture, whether it's most of these are their tombstones or the little profile. If you have put a photograph of the person in there, that will show up there as well. So MyHeritage, it looks a little bit different because MyHeritage, when you build a tree there, it makes its own little, what they call the family website. And so this is the homepage of my Rouse website. When I took the screenshot, I had 4 people in the tree because I've tested DNA there. I've got 22,000 whatever DNA matches. And you can grow your family tree. So, and it tells you what your recent activity was. So I have more than 4 people in that tree now because I've added some things. Now this one is very, very skeletal because I haven't put documents in with the people, that kind of thing. I do not have I have an Ancestry subscription. I do not have a MyHeritage subscription. We all have a budget. And we all have how much we can spend on our various hobbies. And so right now I can afford one of the two, but not both of them. But again, it gives you a chance to add people, look at people, see how they relate. And you can do pedigree view or you can do family view. One of the cool things was when I clicked on whichever parent this was, it's a female, so I'm not sure why it's unknown Rouse, because that's male surname in my family. But anyway, it gives you some opportunity to add parents, spouses, children, brothers and sisters, kind of from this one little pop-out screen, a little bit more visually than Ancestry does. So it's just kind of, again, sometimes it's which tools and which interface work better for you and your learning style and how your brain works. A very cool thing that you can do is there's a fan view. And so just like the fan chart that I was showing in Family Tree Maker, MyHeritage actually does that for you and has some color to it. It's kind of fun. Now, there are limits to what you can do for free on this. You're limited to 250 people. And with both Ancestry and MyHeritage, the default is we're going to make your tree public. And I tend to not like that very much because I want to control which parts of my tree may be public. So, you've got some pros and cons of the online trees that are user controlled only. So Ancestry, MyHeritage, you own your tree. You and or the people that you choose to be editors can add content to your family tree. Now, someone else is controlling the backup unless you're syncing this down to a program on your computer. And something that you need to just be aware of in the back of your head with any of these, and this can happen with the desktop as well as the online companies, they can go out of business, no notice, no, hey, you've got 5 days to back up your stuff before it goes away. Even the large companies can have data crashes. So again, it's one of those things you may want to keep things in multiple places, multiple copies, and just update them periodically, because you can lose a lot of information if something goes down. There are privacy concerns. Ancestry has 3 categories of trees: a public tree, which is fully out there. If someone is living, all you see is the little pink, blue, or gray box for them. You don't see any of their birth or death, or, well, if they're living, they don't have death information, but birth, marriage, other information you don't see for them unless you are the tree owner or someone authorized to see those living people. You can have a private but searchable tree, so that other people can search that tree, but they can't see the information on the people in your tree without contacting you for that information. And then you can make it a totally private tree. I have a public tree for my DNA, which is just the straight pedigree, as far back as I had it at the point that I put that I did my DNA test with Ancestry. And that is the tree that I have with my results at a couple of other places. I don't have that linked to my absolute full tree. Some of that is because I don't want my full big tree with 2,000 plus people in it to be public, because there are people in my tree who I know are adopted, not parent expected, various things that I may have been contacted with them as a researcher, but they have not made that information public on their tree. And it's not my responsibility to out someone online. Because I don't know about you, but I can go to somebody's online public tree with all of those pink and blue and gray people and start counting kids and start putting that descendants and the living people together with public records. Now, it takes some work, which is a good thing, because sometimes you're like, but then this isn't adding up. And so sometimes there are clues there, and it's not my responsibility to give other researchers the clues on people that I don't have permission to share that information. So that's just a little bit of why I keep my large tree private. But with DNA, if you don't have any tree with your DNA, it's extremely frustrating to everybody who matches you. Because if they can't figure out how they match you, at least with my results, they've got surnames going back 5 generations on all lines that they can, okay, well, we match on this surname and that surname and in these locations, that they have a half a chance at being able to identify where we might connect, even if Ancestry doesn't put the piece together, or wherever doesn't put the piece together for them. My Heritage, that website was fully out there until I found the right settings to nope, private. And so it's just one of those situations where read the terms and conditions on whatever you're doing, especially online, and decide where your comfort level is for how much information you're comfortable putting out there. And then the online user The user-only trees online, MyHeritage, Ancestry, Family Tree, just lost the name of the other one. Anyway, all of the big database trees, basically, they are dependent on you having an active subscription to be able to see the records and the hints and message back and forth with other people. So if you don't currently subscribe to Ancestry, you can lose access to some of the stuff that's in your tree. Now, it's still there. And if it's a public tree, it's still out there, but you may or may not be able to access all of what you would have been able to access had you had a full paid subscription at that time. So if it's a fully public tree, you can usually get to it through the library edition, but it's a little bit of work to figure out how to do that, because it'll give you different trees every time you search for your tree. But just something to be aware of. If you do decide that you don't want to continue a subscription to one of the big databases, I do recommend purchasing or getting like the Roots Magic free, Roots Magic Essentials free one to sync all of your information and your documents and your everything down to your computer so that you have all of that information before you cancel the subscription. And if you have an international, like the world subscription on Ancestry, and you're just going down to just the US, you're going to lose access to any of those world documents you've saved unless you've downloaded them to your computer. Just a word to the wise. Been there, done that, seen it. Not pretty. So, because they make their money from the subscriptions, and I want to say most of the paid databases that you would download onto your computer are going to run anywhere from about $25 to $9,500, something like that. There's a range. So, and I didn't check prices on any of them this week because I ran out of time. But you can Google them and find that information, and they're always running specials. If you go to a genealogy conference, you're going to get a offer of a special $10, $20, whatever off. So check around for that as well. So then the wiki trees are a whole nother thing. So if I've seen it once, I've seen it about 80 times in the last 4 months. People on Facebook and some of the genealogy groups going, somebody changed my tree. And they're on Family Search. It's not your tree. On Family Search, the only people you control specifically are the living people. Once someone is deceased, they go into a more public space in Family Search. And Family Search has policy that you merge every instance of that person into one little card, one profile. And so that profile may come from 5 great-grandchildren and a neighbor or whoever put these profiles together. And then they become one profile. So anyone can edit anyone marked as deceased. So on this, you get some hints like this Elizabeth Bennett. There's a little red exclamation point saying, hey, there's something weird. You need to look at this. And there are other possible records and things that show up here. And this is the profile view. This is a person view. And you will notice that my great-grandmother has this KF2M-FR6. That is her profile number. That is the merged profile that they have made out of anybody who had her in their tree as living. Once she was deceased, that has been merged into this one profile. There is a new discovery version of this. I haven't clicked on that because I didn't have time to click on that. So again, all of these databases are changing things all the time. So, you do the best you can to keep up. In the person profile, you have the life sketch, you've got vitals, and I'll show you the next part of that screen in a minute. You've got research help that it says, hey, there's a possible missing child. There may be missing children, but she only had 3 that made it through infanthood that were ever named. So she may have had some miscarriages. We don't know. But her 3 children were born between 1903 and 1914. So they were kind of spread out. So there may be missing children, just none that made it to adulthood, none that the family is aware of. But you can search records from Family Search. You can search records at some of these other places. But when you partner out to that, there are some free collections at these various databases, but not if you don't have a subscription and you're not a member of the LDS Church, then you're not going to have access to much with those additional record searches. This is, as you continued scrolling down, you continue to see the list. GeneaNet is a European, Filiae, I'm assuming, is a European database. I'm not familiar with that. That's the first. This is the first I've seen of that. Find My Past is out of Great Britain. So you get the vitals and various things and other information. What I wanted to show you on this page, though, is you can see the latest changes. So this is my great-grandmother. My brother and I are the only 2 living descendants. So I have no idea who Karen Roberts is, this username, but she's been attaching sources and adding residences and removing an alternative name, and I'm not sure what that was all about. I did have a fight a couple of years ago on this, that there were 2 Carrie Ellen Allens who were born in Marion County in 1879. Mine was very much Caucasian and white and married Fitzhugh. The other one was a mulatto who married somebody else. And some kind soul at Family Search had decided they were the same person, and it associated the wrong Carrie Ellen Allen with Fitzhugh. So this latest changes things help, and you can show all, and you can see all of the changes from a long period of time. And so that helps you know where the error may have crept in, or who thinks it's wrong, that kind of thing. If you have a gender ambiguous name, that can sometimes happen because somebody looks at the name and thinks, well, Joy has to be female. And it's not always a female name in some subgroups of our culture. And so somebody very kindly, they think, changes the gender, and then it has to be changed back. And then you get into a change it situation. And so, it's just one of those things. And at the very bottom of my screenshot under tools, you see the possible duplicates. And that's where they say, hey, there's somebody else who's a Carrie Ellen Allen, born in 1879 in Marion County. And they've updated this location to Dillon County. Dillon County didn't exist until 1910. She couldn't have been born in Dillon County. But anyway, but if there were possible duplicate, you could click on that and you could say, is this a duplicate? Is this not a duplicate? So, wiki trees can sometimes drive you nuts, but they can be some great tools and really be helpful, because you get a lot of people who are wonderful genealogists helping improve the global tree. Wiki tree, and I haven't done a lot of work with this. I've heard a lot from some professional genealogists and others who really like WikiTree. And so I wanted to mention it to you. But this is a independent genealogy tree. As I said, the family search is run by the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints out of Salt Lake City. That is their online webpage and site. And genealogy is huge for that religious group, and they share those resources with the rest of us. So it's a great tool and a great thing. And so this was started in 2008, and it's been growing. You can search it. Their initial search is pretty not robust. And so I was searching for Great Uncle Jasper, because Jasper Rouse, there aren't as many of them. If I had clicked John Rouse in there, there would have been hundreds or thousands of that. I've got 3 John Rouses and 4 generations in my family. And that's just on the direct line. So, there are a lot of them. 1 Jasper. So none of these 28 matches, however, are my Jasper. One thing to be aware of when you're working with these online sites, this search box, see the little sponsored search? You click search here, and it doesn't do a refining of this information. It searches my heritage. My heritage is the sponsor of that box. So sometimes you end up in databases and places that you don't expect because it's an ad that you didn't realize was an ad. That'll happen on Find a Grave as well, and Billion Graves. So it's just one of those things to be remembering when you're on some of these free sites. They're only free to us because they have sponsors and they have advertisers. So, and so the WikiTree, they have researchathons. They will pick a public figure or somebody that they want to do the research on, and they will have all of their top researchers, volunteers on the site, just for 2 weeks or whatever, research the heck out of this person's family. And so they were doing a podcast a couple weeks ago with Henry Louis Gates on stuff that they were able to find on his family that he hasn't been able to find. And Henry Louis Gates is the Finding Your Roots TV show on PBS. I mean, he's had a lot of research done on his family. He's done a lot of research, but he's also had professionals work on his tree. And so they found some stuff that none of those people were able to find at that point. Some of that is new stuff comes online all the time. Stuff is digitized, stuff is added to archival catalogs, all of that kind of thing does make a difference. So it's just, it is a site for collaboration. And if you know that it is a site for collaboration and that your information can be changed by other people, and buyer beware, that's great. But if you're expecting that you put it up and it is your own tree and you're the only one who can edit it, the wiki sites are not for you. If you want ownership and you don't like people changing things, right or wrong, then I wouldn't go to the wiki trees, either Family Search or WikiTree or Genie or any of the other ones. So some pros and cons of these wiki type trees. They are dependent on internet access. If you don't have internet, like I didn't have internet last night, you don't have a tree. You don't have access to it. If you're in the middle of a cemetery in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and there's no cell service, and you can't get to your online tree, and you need to figure out who else might be buried in that cemetery, you're a little up a creek. So if your computer runs out of battery power too, that's happened to me too. So just know it's just one of those things. You've got to prepare for the research trip. Also, again, someone else is controlling the backup. The company may go out of business without notice. This has happened any number of times. Roots Web got bought out by Ancestry, then they didn't maintain it, and 2/3 of it is gone because they had a glitch. And they're not going to put the money into restoring it because they're not making money off of Roots Web. So, wiki style trees, as I have probably said ad nauseum, anyone can edit. There are privacy concerns. I had on Family Search not too long ago, I had gone in there looking for something, answering a question for a patron or prepping for a program, and someone had my mother listed as deceased. My mother I had just talked to like 20 minutes before on my lunch break. Yeah, very much alive. They had gotten her mixed up with the other person with her maiden name, full maiden name, born in the same county in the same year, 6 months apart. And they had merged both of them into a single card. And I'm like, I went in and I contested it and I said, nope, this one is very much the Mary Rouse with these parents is very much living. I said, there is another Mary Rouse in that county, different parents. She's the one who's deceased. I don't have time to do the research for you. But it can be very disturbing if you find someone alive. And in that case, it was very much a benign, just honest mistake. But sometimes people will put folks into these trees as deceased just so they show up and it's easier for them to manipulate the data. But just a reminder, we don't put information about living people accessibly out online. If you're going to put it in your family history book that's going on the shelf in the Kennedy room and on the shelf in 50 families' homes, that's a whole nother issue. And that's fine. But if you're putting it online, be aware of ethics of genealogy, that we don't do that with living people. So those were my screenshots. Are there questions? Feel free to type them in the chat. And I'm happy to move over to slide share of any of those various types of trees if there was something I didn't cover or something that you had a specific question on. But if not, feel free to email us at the kroom@infodepot.org. And that link is also in the handout that you should have been able to get from the chat. And I thank you for coming tonight. I hope to see you next month for the genealogy building blocks. What is your question presentation? And we always enjoy getting your questions and your comments in the Kennedy room. And thank you for joining us. And check out other things on our genealogy playlist. Subscribe to the library's YouTube channel. If we hit a certain number of subscribers, we get some more tools that would be helpful for our people who manage that. Also check out the library calendar to see what other programming is coming up. We've got some fun historical interpreter Chautauqua programs coming up. And so we invite you to join us. But thank you so much for coming tonight and hope to see you next month.